The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Thank you so much for the chat room, for the people in the chat room saving the day. Oh man. Okay, you guys have sound again. It's anyway, let's pretend. Let's start over. Let's pretend like that didn't happen. Here we go. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. Thank you to everyone in the chat room for making sure that I had the audio going. You all saved the day. You are the real MVPs. There's a lot happening in the news. Everything from Donald Trump admitting that that his entire plan all along was to ensure that no one was able to get their mail-in ballots through by ensuring that he didn't provide funding for the post office. I have that clip and we'll go through it momentarily. Number two, the DNC only giving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez 60 seconds. I want to pull, before I even keep going, I want to put this on the screen. I will be putting your comments on the screen, so feel free to send as many comments as you have. They're only going to give Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez 60 seconds to speak, and I've got a clip showing you that that's all she's going to need. It is a snub, it is an insult, but that's all she's going to need. Mike Pence, last night on Sean Hannity's show, he bragged about having the greatest employment numbers ever, despite the fact that 40 million Americans are jobless right now. He bragged on Donald Trump's handling of COVID-19, despite the fact that 167,000 Americans are dead. So I find it really interesting that he's taking that perspective, but I want to play that clip as well. As always, you can call in 857-600-0518 to join the conversation. All right, let's start. I'm going to see if I can find this clip of Donald Trump basically admitting that you can't get any more direct. You cannot get any more clear or any more direct than what Donald Trump said. And he made it clear that his intention all along was to undermine the post office. Now, before I even play the clip, I want to point out a couple of things. This has always been the agenda of the Republican Party, and I don't expect at any level that they are going to push back against this. Number one, because they have a vested interest themselves in making sure Donald Trump is reelected, both politically as well as economically. They have vested interest in trying to break up the post office. So Trump admitting this really isn't going to change anything. It's not going to change anything because it's going to be ignored by Republicans. My best bet is that this is going to be ignored by Republicans. All right, let's take a look at this clip.
They want $3.5 billion for the mail-in votes. Okay, universal mail-in ballots. $3.5 trillion. They want $25 billion for the post office. Now, they need that money in order to have the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. Now, in the meantime, they aren't getting there. By the way, those are just two items. But if they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting. They want $3.5 billion.
All right, so that's the president of the United States admitting his entire plan for blocking universal mail-in voting, mail-in ballots. It has been clear to everyone who's been paying attention that this was his agenda all along. The disruptions that we've seen at the post office, it has been merely twofold, actually. One is to help him get reelected by diminishing the post office's capacity to actually handle that number of mail-in ballots, the surge of mail-in ballots that are going to come in as a result of COVID-19. But then two, there has been a long fixation within the Republican Party to privatize, to ruin the USPS and then privatize it and sell it off to private corporations that they can get profit off of. I want to bring up a tweet on your screen from CNN's Abby Phillip. And this is what she said. She said that Trump saying clearly on Fox News why he won't fund the USPS. Now they need that money in order to make the post office work so it can take all these millions and millions of ballots. But if they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting. And that is, I don't think it has been any clearer at any other point that Donald Trump actually admits. Here's the thing. Him admitting this doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything for Republicans. I would be surprised if a single Republican comes out and speaks against this. The post office clearly has been a staple in America since America has been America. And so the conservative position on this should be to absolutely oppose Donald Trump's agenda with regard to the post office at any cost. But we are not going to see that kind of response from Republicans because this is the era of Trump, where they will allow him to get away with anything and everything, all in exchange basically for tax cuts. They are willing to see this country burn to embers so that they can maintain those tax breaks that he gave them in 2017. And then for a portion of the Republican base, they enjoy the schadenfreude. They enjoy the cruelty because the cruelty is the point. So again, this is breaking news. This is Donald Trump admitting clearly, saying that the reason that he is not going to fund the United States Postal Service is because it will allow them to implement universal mail-in voting. And he knows that that is a threat to his reelection campaign.
Hey, I'm Russell. I'm calling from Lauderhill, Florida. How you doing, Ben? I just had a Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to make a point with regards to capitalism and the reopening, if that's all right. What I wanted to talk about, I think when we talk about our system, we often talk about the unfair distribution of resources and wealth, and which is very important. But I also think we need to emphasize more the unfair distribution of decision making in the economy.
Right.
So, for example, when it came to reopening, that decision was made by the owners. It was made by the class of people who own the businesses and the companies, while the workers played no role in that decision whatsoever. And you could imagine we would have had a much better situation if the workers, the people who are actually servicing the customers, whether in retail, if they had a say over, when we go back to work and when it's safe. And
Right.
so, and if you broaden that out, if you look at when they ship jobs overseas, the company decide they don't care about the workers, they don't care about the community. They do what's best for them, even though the workers have been contributing to that wealth for so long. They don't come into that decision making. So I just think that's an important thing. It's not just about the distribution of wealth and resources. It's about the distribution of power and decision making. So that's the point that I wanted to make. Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for that call, 857-600-0518. I think that's a critical point, and it's a point that actually segues back into what Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump is trying to undermine the post office so that, for two purposes, particularly the second part that I spoke about, how Republicans have longed to be able to privatize the post office so that they could break it up for corporations. And embedded in all of that, obviously, is preferential treatment towards capital. the way that they treat labor, and they have historically treated labor. So I agree with you. The real question is what will be done about this? Will anybody do anything about this? Of course, we don't expect Republicans to do anything about this, right? We don't expect Republicans to actually stand up for an institution that is as old as America. You would think the conservative thing to do here would be to absolutely oppose Donald Trump, but they're not going to do that. There was a tweet, I don't know if I can find it while we're discussing it, but it was a tweet from Jamel Bowie of the New York Times. And you know what? Actually, I can find it pretty easily. Let me do it like this. This is what he said on Twitter. See if I can get it on your screen for you to see. On Twitter, Jamel Bowie said, reminder that the reason Trump can sabotage the USP is because congressional Republicans are lockstep behind him. And that's it. I mean, that's the absolute hardcore truth. Whether Republicans will ever admit it or not, they will absolutely never do anything to undermine what Trump is doing with the post office, because they are absolutely in lockstep with him on that type of behavior. And then the fact that he can make it so clear really is a testament to how far gone we are as a country. His supporters are not going to care. In fact, his supporters are applauding this. His supporters, who are going to cry that everything that, God help us, a Joe Biden administration is going to do, they're going to label everything that Joe Biden does. I'm having a hard time even saying that phrase, to be honest with you. Hang on. Y'all, you guys, give me a second. Give me a second. Joe Biden. Just what? Okay. All right. I'm back. Everything that Joe Biden does, they're going to label it as extreme socialist. Everything that Kamala Harris does, they're already labeling her as a Marxist. And they swear that even if these two people happen to do something beneficial for the average American, like, let's say, give Americans $2,000 a month of universal basic income throughout this pandemic, that's something that Kamala Harris actually proposed. Let's say they actually do that. They are going to be more, Republicans, conservatives are going to be more upset about the fact that they did that they helped the American people. They will label that as fascism, when Donald Trump defunding the post office specifically for the purposes of protecting his position as president. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. There's a lot more for us to get to, and I'm doing, just to be sure, I do the live broadcast of this so that I can capture your phone calls, so that I can capture what you have to say and include it in the podcast. So be sure to download the full podcast. There's a link in the description to the iTunes link where you could download the podcast for free. It's a full hour episode. And if you want the full hour and a half experience, become a patron, patreon.com /the BPD show. All right. I'm going to make a move to another story real quick as I try to read your comments, answer the phones. And I used to do this pretty easily, to be quite honest with you. Like back when I was in Boston the first time, I was running the TriCaster, taking the calls and everything. But then I got a producer by the name of Max, and he kind of spoiled me. I no longer had to do everything. And so now that we're in this pandemic, I'm back to having to do everything again. And I'm starting to get the hang of it. I think I feel it. All right, let's go to the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is only being given a minute. That's it. 1 minute. The Democratic Party is giving her 1 minute to speak at the Democratic National Committee next week. Let's transition to that real quickly.
Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs for our family.
According to BusinessInsider.com, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York will only be given 60 seconds to speak at the Democratic convention next week. This is obviously a snub when you consider the fact that the Democratic Party has given speaking positions to Republican Anna Navarro, Republican John Kasich, and essentially made up their mind at the very last second to give her any time at all. And instead of completely snubbing her, they only gave her 60 seconds. This makes absolutely no sense in context of the fact that for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to win, they are going to need progressive voters. This election is not a shoo-in. And so to snub her at this point shows a level of pettiness that the Democratic Party is willing to engage in that would put the election actually at risk. And not to mention the fact that she is one of the biggest and brightest stars of the Democratic Party right now. And perhaps that's the reason the Democrats don't want to actually give her an opportunity to speak, because they fear that she will have an Obama 2004 moment where she would be catapulted even further onto the national stage and her position in the Democratic Party would be solidified even more. Now, to be sure, AOC is an amazing orator, and I'm confident that she won't need more than 60 seconds to speak truth to power. Listen to this exchange on the floor of the House of Representatives.
I represent one of the hardest hit communities in the hardest hit city in this country, Queens, New York. 13 dead in a night in Elmhurst Hospital alone. Our community's reality is this country's future if we don't do anything. Hospital workers do not have protective equipment. We don't have the necessary ventilators. But we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American